My name is Julie. I was the first child my mom had while she was still figuring things out. She married my dad, Thomas, right after high school. They were in love but didn't have much money, and that didn't work out for them. I was still a little kid when she met Richard, a man with lots of money and a fancy car. She left my dad, took me with her, and never looked back except to get the alimony checks. Richard seemed nice at first. He would bring me treats and let me play in his big office with shiny things. But Mom acted differently around him. She looked at me like I reminded her of a past she wanted to forget. One evening, I overheard them talking in the kitchen while I was supposed to be watching TV. Mom said, "She's too much like Tom," in a sharp tone. I didn't understand then, but it hurt to hear her talk like I was a problem. I loved my real dad, even though he lived in a small apartment across the city. Every moment with him was fun, whether we were playing ball in the park or eating cheap pizza. Mom's harsh words stayed with me, and she kept using them. Whenever I tried to help or do my schoolwork, she would say things like, "Can't you do anything right?" Dad was different. He would always tell me, "You're doing great, Julie," whenever I showed him my grades or drawings. He encouraged me to ignore anyone who said otherwise. Things with Mom and Richard got tougher when I started school. Mom cared a lot about appearances and always complained about my clothes and friends. She would compare me to other kids and criticize me for not fitting in. One day, after a particularly harsh scolding about my muddy shoes, I snapped back, saying, "At least Dad doesn't yell about a bit of dirt." Her slap was quick and stung my cheek before I even saw it coming. "Don't talk about your father like that," she hissed, her breath smelling of coffee and anger. I wanted to cry but held back, just like Dad taught me. That night, lying in bed, I promised myself I wouldn't let her see me cry or give her the satisfaction. When Mom announced she was pregnant again, the house felt different, like something was about to change, but maybe not for the better. Mom had that glow people talk about, but it never seemed to be for me. She told us one evening, rubbing her belly, "I'm having a baby with Richard. It's going to be perfect." Richard, always charming, added, "We'll need to redo the guest room to make it fit for a little princess." My heart sank when I realized they were talking about my room. I asked, "What about my room?" trying to stay calm. Mom gave me a tight smile and said, "You can move into the smaller room, Julie. It's only fair. The baby needs the space." The way she said it made it sound like there was no room for discussion. So I packed up my things and moved to the smallest room in the house, barely bigger than a closet. The months went by quickly, and soon Lily was born. Everyone was talking about her, saying how beautiful she was. Mom would gush to her friends, cradling Lily as if she were made of the finest porcelain. "Yeah, she's cute," I would say, trying to join in. Lily was adorable, and I loved her the moment I saw her. I wanted to be a good big sister and help out. One afternoon, I tried to sneak into Lily's room while Mom was busy in the kitchen. I tiptoed in and peered over the crib at my baby sister, who was happily gurgling. "Hey there, Lily," I whispered, reaching out a finger for her to grab. Mom must have heard me because she appeared at the door suddenly, her voice sharp. "What are you doing, Julie? I told you, you need to ask before going into her room." "I just wanted to see her," I protested, feeling tears well up in my eyes. I wanted to help, but Dad was different. One weekend when I was with him, we were having pizza at our favorite place, and I opened up about how Mom was always on edge with me around Lily. I told him it felt like she thought I'd break her or something. Dad thought for a moment and said, "You know, Julie, some people have a hard time sharing love. They think there's only so much to go around. But you've got a big heart. Don't let your mom's ways make you think otherwise." His words made me feel a little better, but back at Mom's house, things didn't improve. Even when I tried to talk about school or friends, Mom was always half listening, her attention mostly on Lily. One day, I came home with a school award for second place in the science fair. I was excited and showed Mom the certificate while she was feeding Lily. "Look, Mom, I won this," I said, holding it out. "That's nice, dear," she replied without looking up. "Put it on the fridge or something." I put the certificate on the fridge, a bit crooked, and stepped back. It felt like just another piece of paper, another day overshadowed by Lily. By the time I reached high school, things were really rough at home. Mom was cold, and Richard seemed indifferent. I felt more like a guest than a family member. Then, out of the blue, Mom said it was time for me to live with Dad permanently. She told me at dinner, just the two of us. while Richard was still at work and Lily was already asleep. "Julie, we need to talk about your future," Mom said, pushing her food around her plate with a fork. Her voice was cold and businesslike, which made me nervous. "What about it?" I asked, trying to sound casual, but my heart was racing. "We've been discussing things," Mom said, "and we think it's best if you move in with your father. With the new baby coming, things here are complicated. You're not a child anymore. You need your own space, and we can't provide that here, not with the new situation. It's cramped, and frankly, the financial burden is more than we expected." I almost choked on my water. Move in with Dad? But why? I thought everything was fine here. Mom sighed deeply. "Look, Julie, it's just not working out. You'll be better off with your dad." "It's better for everyone this way," Mom said. I pushed my plate away, no longer hungry. "What about school and my friends?" I asked. "You can go to a new school and make new friends," she replied, as if it were that simple, like I could just erase my old life and start fresh without any trouble. The next few weeks were a blur. I packed up my things, books, clothes, and a few keepsakes that meant something to me, into boxes. Richard barely said goodbye, and Lily, too young to understand, gave me a confused hug. Moving day was hard. Dad lived on the other side of town in a modest apartment. It was clean but cluttered with reminders of a life that had been on hold since Mom left him. When I arrived, Dad was there waiting with open arms and a worried smile. The apartment was nothing like the house I grew up in. My new room was much smaller, with walls that needed painting and a window facing a brick wall. But it was quiet, and Dad was trying his best. The first day at my new school was tough. As I walked down the crowded hallways, I could feel the stares and hear the whispers. "That's the new girl," as if I were some kind of oddity. In class, I kept to myself, doodling in my notebook to block out the murmurs. When the bell rang, I was the first to leave, not wanting to linger. At home, Dad noticed my mood. "How was school?" he asked, trying to sound upbeat. "It was fine," I lied, shrugging off my coat and dumping my bag by the door. "If it gets tough, you tell me, okay? We're in this together." "You're not alone, Julie," he said. His words meant a lot, but the loneliness I felt was deep and gnawing. It wasn't just about missing my old friends or the big house. It was about feeling unwanted and pushed out, like I was a burden. Adjusting to life at Dad's wasn't easy, but I knew if I didn't pull myself together, things would only get worse. One morning, I woke up, looked around my small room, and decided it was time to take charge of my life. "No one else is going to do it for me," I muttered to myself. Dad noticed the change right away. Over breakfast one day, he looked up from his coffee and said, "You seem more determined these days, Julie. What's on your mind?" I stirred my cereal, trying to find the right words. "I want to make something of myself, Dad. I don't want to end up stuck," I said. He nodded, a serious expression on his face. "I hear you, kiddo. So what's the plan?" "That big scholarship for top students, I'm going to get it," I declared, more to convince myself than him. Dad's smile was just the encouragement I needed. "If anyone can get it, it's you. Just let me know what you need from me." School was tough. I spent long hours catching up and even more time buried in books. My teachers noticed the change. Even the strict ones seemed to respect my effort. One day, Mr. Jensen, my math teacher, kept me after class. "Julie, your work has improved a lot. What's the goal?" he asked. "I need that scholarship," I replied bluntly, packing up my stuff. "I've got plans, and they don't include being stuck here forever." Mr. Jensen studied me for a moment before nodding. "Well, keep at it and let me know if you need extra help. I'm here." Making friends wasn't easy, but I found a few people who didn't mind that I wasn't always the life of the party. During lunch, I sat with Maria and Luke, two kids who weren't exactly popular but knew how to laugh. "So, Julie, you're like a library ninja now," Luke joked one day, nudging me as we sat down with our trays. I cracked a smile. "Yeah, gotta be stealthy if I want to snag the best study spots." Maria, her voice soft but sincere, said, "It's cool what you're doing, Julie. Most people wouldn't bother." As the days turned into months and the pressure built up with the approaching application deadlines, Dad was my rock. He was always there with a hot meal and a listening ear whenever the stress became too much. The day the scholarship letter arrived, my hands were shaking as I opened it. Dad was right there, holding his breath. I read the words with my heart pounding, and when I realized I had won, I let out a cheer so loud I'm sure the neighbors heard. "I got it, Dad. I got it," I yelled, waving the letter like a victory flag. Dad swept me into a big hug, laughing and cheering with me. "I knew you could do it," he said. A few months later, as I packed up my things for college, I felt ready. The future seemed bright, and for the first time, it felt like it was truly mine. I was leaving, but I was taking all the lessons, love, and hard-earned wisdom with me. After graduating with honors and starting a solid career, I felt like I was finally on stable ground. I was 28, doing well professionally, and had just started seeing a wonderful guy from work, Jack, who had been nothing but supportive. Then, out of the blue, my mom called. We hadn't spoken much since I moved out, but suddenly she was back with a request, or rather, a demand. "Julie, your sister Lily is going to college in your city. We've paid her tuition and think it would be best if she stayed with you," Mom said, her tone making it clear this wasn't just a suggestion. I hesitated, remembering our strained relationship, but I wanted to believe things could be different. "Okay, Mom, I'll help Lily out. It might be nice to reconnect," I said, trying to sound positive. Lily moved in a week later, and it was clear we were very different. She was always focused on her appearance and had high maintenance needs. On her first evening, she asked, "Can you make sure we have almond milk and kale? I'm on a special diet." "Sure, I'll add them to the grocery list," I replied, trying to be accommodating. But living with Lily was harder than I expected. She partied all the time, coming home at dawn with loud laughter, while I was anxious about work. One afternoon, Jack came over while Lily was getting ready for a night out. I noticed how she smiled at him a little too sweetly. After she left, Jack said, "Julie, I think Lily's got the wrong idea about me. She's been flirting." I felt a mix of anger and embarrassment. "Thanks for telling me, Jack. I'll talk to her." When I confronted Lily, she laughed it off. "Oh, come on, Julie. I'm just being friendly. Besides, can I help it if he likes me back?" "That's my fiancé, Lily. You need to respect that," I said firmly. Her laugh chilled me. "Julie, I'm used to getting what I want. I always have been." That was the last straw. I couldn't live like this, constantly feeling I had to guard my life from my own sister. "You need to find another place to live, Lily. This isn't working out," I told her firmly. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Within an hour, my phone rang. It was Mom, her voice cold and sharp. "You're such an envious girl, Julie. Can't stand to see your sister happy, can you?" "I just want respect, Mom. That's all," I replied, but it felt like talking to a wall. After that, things went quiet with Lily. I heard she dropped out of college and was living off her charm and social connections. I focused on my life with Jack, my work, and rebuilding my boundaries. 2 years later, things were going well for me. I was advancing at work, and life with Jack was great. Then I heard about Lily. She had dropped out and was getting married to a rich guy she'd met. Feeling a mix of curiosity and goodwill, I called home to offer congratulations. Mom answered, her voice as cold as ever. "Don't bother. We're not waiting for you at the wedding. It's for rich people only, and we don't need any beggars there." Her words cut deep. I tightened my grip on the phone, feeling the old sting of rejection. "Really, Mom? That's how you're going to be? What did you expect, Julie? You've always been the difficult one." "Just stay away," she said before hanging up. I stood there, the dial tone echoing in my ear. The hurt was real, but I wasn't going to let it break me. I later found out that Lily's wedding was lavish, with popular artists and actors. Life moved on for me too. Jack proposed, and suddenly I was planning my own wedding. Nothing extravagant, but filled with love and sincerity. I called Dad to share the news. "That's wonderful, Julie. I wouldn't miss it for the world," he said, his voice brimming with happiness. Encouraged by Dad's reaction, I decided to make one last attempt to reconnect with Mom. I dialed Mom's number, my heart racing. When she answered, I said, "Mom, I'm getting married. I'd really like you to come." Her reply was icy. "No, Julie, I'm not interested in some modest gathering. Count me out." I swallowed hard, fighting back tears. "Okay, Mom, take care." I hung up, knowing it might be the last time I'd invite her into my life. Our wedding was simple but beautiful. Dad walked me down the aisle, and his presence was a steady comfort. The room was filled with genuine smiles and heartfelt congratulations, unlike the grandeur and coldness of Lily's wedding. Our modest reception was full of laughter, dancing, and stories. Jack and I celebrated with friends and family who loved us for who we were, not for our money or status. Life was moving along well. Jack and I were thrilled to be expecting our first child. One ordinary afternoon, my phone rang and turned my day upside down. It was Mom, and she wasn't calling with congratulations. "Julie, you have to take us in. We're desperate," she said, skipping any pleasantries. "What's going on?" I asked, though I was afraid to hear the answer. "Richard's business failed. We mortgaged the house for Lily's wedding, and now it's all gone. Lily's marriage is over, and her husband kicked her out, demanding money for her cheating," she explained, her voice full of panic. I took a deep breath, trying to process everything. "Okay, slow down. What exactly are you asking?" "We need a place to stay. All of us. We're coming to your house," she said as if it were obvious. Her demand hit me hard. "No, Mom, you can't just decide to move in with us. It doesn't work like that. You owe us after everything we've done for you," she snapped. I felt a surge of anger. "Oh, Mom, remember how you were when I needed you most? You pushed me out and chose everything over me. Now you expect me to open my doors?" Her voice rose. "You're being selfish, Julie. Where is your family spirit? I am your mother." "Being a mother doesn't mean making demands," I shot back. "It's not about debts." Her fury was palpable. "You'll regret this, Julie. I might even take you to court to get what I deserve." I laughed, though it was more from disbelief. "Go ahead and try. Dad was my guardian when you kicked me out. What will you claim? Your daughter wouldn't let you live off her after you threw her out." There was a pause, and I could almost hear her thinking. "This isn't over, Julie," she hissed before hanging up. After that call, life felt like a fresh start. Jack and I were busy preparing the nursery, picking paint colors, and assembling the crib. On a sunny Sunday morning, I was folding baby clothes and putting them neatly into the new dresser. Jack was busy drilling something while I was organizing baby things. He looked over with a smile and asked, "How's it going, Julie? Need any help?" "I got it, thanks," I said, running my hand over a tiny Wednesday, just thinking about everything. "It's really happening, huh?" "It really is. We're going to be parents," Jack said, his voice a mix of awe and nervous excitement. Then there was a knock at the door. Jack went to answer it while I continued organizing. I heard voices and Jack called out, "Julie, it's for you." I was surprised to see my dad at the door, holding a teddy bear and grinning. "Surprise," he said. "Dad, what are you doing here?" I asked, rushing over to hug him. "I wanted to see how my favorite daughter is doing," he said, handing me the teddy bear, "and I brought something for my future grandchild." "Thank you, Dad. It means a lot that you're here," I said, feeling emotional. Dad looked around at the baby furniture and books. "Looks like you're almost ready." "We're trying. It's a lot, but we're excited," I told him. Then I hesitated. "Dad, I had another call with Mom. It didn't go well." Dad's smile faded. I heard she wasn't pleased. "No, she wasn't," I said firmly, but I had to stand my ground. "We need peace here, for me, Jack, and the baby." The day passed with Dad sharing stories and giving us some amusing parenting advice. We enjoyed our time together. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, we sat on the porch. Jack put his arm around me and I leaned into him. Despite everything with Mom and the drama, I feel lucky we have each other, I said, looking at the fading light. "We're about to start this amazing new chapter, and I think it's going to be great." Jack kissed the top of my head. "It will be. We've got this, Julie." As night fell and Dad said his goodbyes, I felt a deep sense of contentment and readiness for the future. The challenges with Mom and the uncertainty of new beginnings have been tough, but they had led me to this moment surrounded by love and support. That's right about your father's inheritance. Emily and I will take over all the remaining assets. My mother told me right after my father's funeral. To be honest, I had no intention of discussing the inheritance on the day my father passed away. However, Emily eagerly pushed the conversation forward with sparkling eyes. "There's a will too. Look," Emily continued, proudly displaying the document. "Just after Dad went to the hospital, Mom and I visited his room and had him write this. Dad immediately agreed to leave neither inheritance nor anything to you, sis." "Dad did that?" I asked, stunned. "Yeah, he did, even though he always relied on you. I know it's harsh. It's pitiful for you, isn't it? But of course, Dad always found me more affable and favored me," Emily said smugly. "No way," I started, but my mother cut in gleefully. You who have no job, we have no intention of giving you a single penny from the inheritance. We'll be enjoying a trip abroad, so prepare to leave this house by the time we return. Wait, how can I accept this? Why would such a thing happen? I tried to speak, but Mom and Emily retorted coldly. Be quiet. It's impossible for you to get anything from us now. Now that Dad's gone, we can finally act freely. Your role here is done, so leave immediately. All the sacrifices I'd made for Dad, all I'd done for him, and this was the result. How cruel. Giving everything for such an ungrateful father was pointless, even if I wished for their help. Now it's too late. Hearing those words, any remaining familial feelings toward my mother and Emily disappeared entirely. I couldn't accept what they said about my father, whom I deeply respected. Without expressing all I wanted to say to my mother and Emily, I calmly responded, I understand. I can't stay with you two any longer. I'll gladly leave. With that, I left my childhood home. My name is Ashley. I have a sister, Emily, who's 4 years younger than me. We're a family of 4 with our 2 parents. Emily's personality is similar to our mother's. She's affable but sometimes lazy. She often teases my father and me, who have more sincere personalities. Our mother, having a temperament like Emily's, felt especially fond of her. When we were children, it was evident she favored Emily over me. Whenever she met her friends, my mother would only take Emily with her, often leaving me at home. According to her, it's embarrassing to show plain and quiet Ashley to my friends. On the other hand, my mother was very proud of Emily, who was friendly and loved by everyone. Even with such a mother and sister, the reason I could live my days positively was because of my father. He valued my sincerity and loved Emily equally. I deeply appreciated and loved my father's fair attitude. Even after becoming an adult, the way my mother treated me remained unchanged. However, thanks to my father's presence, our household remained stable. But after my father retired at 65, an incident occurred at home. He tripped over a small step in the house and broke a bone. Although he tried hard with surgery and rehabilitation, his aging muscles didn't recover easily. As he spent more time bedridden and needed care, the dynamics at home changed. My mother and Emily became even colder toward him. Hey Mom, what do you think about this inn? Emily asked. Yeah, it looks good. The food seems delicious too. Maybe we should go with this one. My mother replied, looking at a guidebook. They chatted excitedly. What are you talking about? I asked. We're planning for a family trip, my mother answered with a hint of annoyance. But considering Dad's difficulty in moving around, isn't traveling difficult for him? I responded. Emily smiled and said, well, we're not thinking of bringing him in the first place. We plan to leave him at home. That's cruel. It would be hard for him if he's left alone. If Dad's not joining, I will stay home with him, I said. My mother and Emily just smiled at each other. Then my mother said, that's fine too. If that's the case, Emily and I will just go by ourselves. Whether you two come or not is up to you, but since it's a family trip, we'll be using money from Dad's bank account. A quick glance at the guidebook revealed they had chosen a room meant for just 2 people. It was clear they had never intended to bring either my father or me along. After that, my mother and Emily frequently went out by themselves, staying at high-quality inns and dining at reputed restaurants. It was as if neither my father nor I existed in the house. I kept an eye on their actions from a distance, trying to finish my work as quickly as possible to take care of my father. When I couldn't handle everything alone, I sought help from care services for tasks like bathing assistance or accompanying my father on short walks around the neighborhood. On days when I had to work overtime, I asked my mother and Emily to look after my father, but they avoided the responsibility. Ashley, I came to help with the bath, but is there no one at home today? Upon receiving this notification from the care service staff, I quickly called my mother and Emily. Despite having informed them of the staff's visit in advance, they had left my father alone and gone out. When they finally returned home, I confronted them, but there was no apology. The staff are professionals, right? It's okay even if we aren't there. Dad is an adult. He'll be fine being left alone. We don't want our time taken up caring for him like you do, they said, genuinely believing they were doing nothing wrong. I realized I couldn't rely on them and decided that taking care of my father was my responsibility. I juggled work and caregiving. The daily grind was far from easy, especially since neither my mother nor Emily showed any concern or understanding. My father's condition worsened as the days went by. He spent more time seated than walking and ate much less. As the 9th year of caring for my father approached, I became increasingly concerned about how frail he looked when I took him to the hospital. I was hit with a shocking diagnosis. Your father has advanced cancer. It can't be, I thought, realizing that we might not have much time left with him. Determined to support him in his final days, I quit my job to care for him full-time. I knew I had to tell my mother and Emily. The reactions were unexpected. When I informed them about his condition, my mother commented, "Really? He never drank or smoked. It's unfortunate that such a sincere person ended up with cancer." Emily, with a stunned expression, said, "I can't believe you'd give up your job to take care of Dad. I'd never make that choice." I thought they would be concerned about him, but they showed no signs of it at all. I was honestly surprised by their indifference, as if it was someone else's business. In the end, the two of them only visited him at the hospital for a short time and never really came to pay a proper visit. I supported him daily during his chemotherapy treatments. Despite our best efforts, we couldn't stop the cancer's progression, and half a year later, he passed away. The days after the diagnosis went by in a blur. Upon hearing of his death, my mother and Emily started a private discussion and left me to arrange the funeral on my own. They disappeared somewhere, leaving me with no time to mourn my father, as I had to handle the funeral arrangements alone. As the funeral began, my mother appeared and began to deliver the chief mourner's speech. Despite having done nothing, she put on a face for the public. I was irritated by her behavior, but the funeral proceeded smoothly. Worn out as I headed home, I was invited to the living room by my mother and Emily, who had already returned, saying they had something to discuss. Without any consideration for my exhaustion, my mother abruptly declared, "Regarding your father's inheritance, Emily and I will inherit this house and all other assets." Frankly, I wasn't in the mood to discuss inheritance on the very day my father passed away. However, Emily eagerly chimed in, "We even have a proper will. Look," she proudly presented a document and began to explain. "Right after Dad was admitted to the hospital, Mom and I visited him and had him sign this. It states that you won't inherit anything." Dad agreed to it immediately. "Dad did?" I asked in disbelief. With a smirk, Emily said, "After all the help you provided, it's so cold, right? Maybe Dad in the end preferred me over his too serious elder daughter." "That's impossible," I began, but my mother interrupted with an inappropriate grin. "Clearly Emily is more adorable. Though your father always stayed home and had no hobbies, he surely saved a lot. Mom even quit her job because of the inheritance, and I took some time off work to enjoy it for a while," Emily added. Before I could respond, the two of them continued their conversation. My mother then told me, "You, who have no job, won't get a penny from the inheritance. We plan to enjoy a vacation abroad for a while, so you should leave this place by then," my mother declared. I hurriedly countered, "Wait a minute, do you genuinely believe what you're doing is right? If that's the case..." Without waiting for me to finish, both my mother and Emily firmly responded, "Shut your mouth. It's a waste of time trying to take the inheritance from us. With your father gone, we'll do as we please. Your role here is done. Please leave this house promptly." To think that after all I sacrificed for Dad, this is what I get. There was no need to go to such lengths for such an inept father. It's pointless to regret and think about it now. Hearing those words, any remaining bond I felt for my mother and Emily was completely severed. I couldn't forgive them for speaking that way about my beloved father. Holding back what I wanted to say, I calmly told them, "I understand your thoughts. From now on, I can't imagine living together with you two. I'll gladly leave." Despite their initial surprise at my acceptance, the two soon smiled smugly together. "Good to know. Once you leave this house, never rely on us again. Our relationship ends here. Whatever happens to you, we want no part in it. Don't even think of contacting us." Receiving this intense sentiment from my mother, I packed only my essentials and left the house. A few days after the inheritance discussion, something unexpected happened. I received a call from my mother. My mother, who had claimed she would cut off contact with me, was suddenly on the phone, confronting me angrily. "What have you done? Where has all the money from your father's account gone? Why are you suddenly calling? Didn't you say you wouldn't contact me?" "Silence. This is an emergency. Return your father's savings immediately." "What are you talking about? I left the passbook at the old house. I have no way of accessing it after I left. But the money in the account is definitely gone." Such a significant amount of his savings couldn't have disappeared so suddenly. I found it suspicious when you managed to move out so quickly without a job, she snapped, assuming I had squandered my father's money. Mom, haven't you ever checked the account balance before? Huh? I haven't bothered with such things. I see. If you had, you would have noticed that Dad's savings weren't that much to begin with. What do you mean? His savings were? Where did his retirement money go? We used it for our wedding ceremony and the new house. Wedding? New house? I have no idea what you're talking about. I had been in a romantic relationship with a man named Sean, who was in charge of the caregiving service for my father. Our relationship started through our mutual care for my father. I had told my father about my relationship with Sean soon after we began dating. Sean proposed, but at that time, I was overwhelmed with caregiving and work responsibilities and couldn't make a decision. Upon learning the truth, my father had said, "Care for yourself more than me. I want you to have a happy marriage," my father had said, cheering me on despite my hesitations. He even started helping with the wedding venue selection and looking for a new place to live. We had reserved a wedding date for the following year and even signed a contract for a new apartment that my father liked. This all happened 6 months before we found out that he had terminal cancer. As a gesture of gratitude, my father covered most of the costs for the wedding and the new apartment. That was the reason for the decrease in the account balance. Hearing the turn of events, my mother's voice trembled. She was clearly shaken. So there wasn't any inheritance for us to inherit in the first place. Primarily just the family home, but given its location, we shouldn't expect a high selling price, I replied. Emily, having overheard the conversation, snatched the phone from my mother in panic. Wait, so the financial assistance for your wedding is much more than the inheritance for Mom and me? That seems to be the case. Dad knew about my marriage and me leaving the house, so maybe he didn't see a problem in leaving the family home to both of you. He might have used a significant amount for me and intended the inheritance to compensate for that. Could it be that the reason you quit your job was because your marriage had been decided upon? Emily asked. That's right. Sean is also involved in investment activities and is financially stable. He wanted me to become a full-time housewife. Also, I thought if I resigned early, I could focus on taking care of our father. I can't believe it. Why did you keep the news about your marriage and the savings a secret from us? Taking a deep breath, I answered, I thought about telling you several times, but every time, neither of you showed any interest and avoided the topic. Why didn't you stop me from taking a break from work or Mom from quitting her part-time job? How are we supposed to live now? I wanted to talk to you after the funeral. Wasn't it you and Mom who shut me down, saying you can't expect anything from us? But I thought family members should help each other out. Family. When I was swamped with work and caregiving, you were out having fun, neglecting Dad. How can I think of someone who said such mean things as family? Don't just say whatever is convenient for you. Shocked and lost for words, Emily was taken aback. Afterward, my mother pleaded with me, Ashley, the truth is, I've already paid for the trip. I also made various purchases expecting the inheritance, so now I have no savings left. So what about it? I've already quit my part-time job, right? If we don't get any inheritance money, we won't have any money for next month. So until I find a new job, I hope you can lend us some. When you kicked me out of the family home, didn't you say you'd never come to me again? That our relationship was over? That you wouldn't interfere with whatever happens to me in the future? About that, neither of you ever helped when Dad and I were going through tough times. Now, when you're in trouble, you want to rely on me. That's incredibly brazen. But if you don't help us now, what will we do? Without waiting for my mother to finish, I ended the call and blocked their numbers. I was utterly disgusted by my mother and sister, who only claim to be family when they're in trouble. I decided to distance myself from these two. Later on, I heard from various people that although my mother and Emily had canceled their trip, since it was a last-minute cancellation, they couldn't get a refund. They'd been barely scraping by, asking friends and relatives for money. They had to sell their house, but as I expected, they didn't get as much as they hoped with the initial expenses for a new place. With hardly any money left after selling their house and covering moving costs, Emily returned to work. However, because she had asked her colleagues for money, her relationships at work became strained. She had planned to leave her job soon after finding a good partner. But because of the situation, that partner, as well as other men, distanced themselves. Her friends, too, kept their distance. My mother tried to find another part-time job, but her previous workplace had already hired someone else. Due to her age, her job opportunities were limited. She's been working diligently, facing complaints from younger colleagues. Currently, they manage their living expenses with my mother's meager part-time salary and Emily's earnings, slowly repaying their debts. Both of them seem worn out. As for me, I was able to have a small wedding at the venue my father chose. The only regret is that my father couldn't be there for my wedding, but I believe he's watching over our happy moments from somewhere. My married life with Sean has been smoother than expected. We're enjoying peaceful and fulfilling days together. I'm eternally grateful to my father for supporting my relationship with Sean and giving me this opportunity to build a peaceful life with my husband, always remembering my gratitude to my father. My mother-in-law scrutinized the allergy test results with a piercing gaze. As soon as she confirmed our child's blood type, she erupted, "This is outrageous. This child can't be our son's. We all share the same blood type." She crumpled the test results in a fit of rage and hurled them to the floor. "I had my suspicions ever since you announced your pregnancy. You tricked our son into this." Calmly, I picked up the crumpled paper from the floor and examined it. Then I looked up and said, "Yes, mother-in-law, he's not your son's child. My name is Kay Forrester, 34 years old. I live with my husband, Jake, in a rented apartment in New York. Our relationship began as a workplace romance, and despite his busy schedule, Jake is a kind husband who actively helps with household chores. Even today, when I came home, Jake had washed the frying pan and dishes from breakfast. Welcome back. Try not to push yourself too hard with the overtime. You won't be able to handle it, okay?" he said. "I'm home," I replied. "Yeah, I know. But I can't just ignore it. I can't help it." While changing into my loungewear in the bedroom, I caught a whiff of a delicious aroma wafting from the kitchen. Tonight's dinner was my favorite, Jake's special fried chicken. I grabbed a can of beer from the fridge and noticed a big circle around the 10th on the calendar. "Oh, I completely forgot. Next Friday is our 7th wedding anniversary. Let's go out for dinner. I feel like having French for a change." "I thought you might say that. I've already made a reservation at a French restaurant in Manhattan," Jake replied. "Really? Thank you. I'm so excited." As I savored a mouthful of fried chicken, I found myself reflecting deeply on the 7 years that had passed since our wedding. We still don't have children. I had always thought that pregnancy would naturally follow marriage, but even after 1 year, 2 years, it didn't happen. My sister, who married 4 years after me, now has 2 kids, and my friends seem to be getting pregnant one after another. In the early years, I wasn't desperate and could genuinely celebrate the pregnancy announcements of those close to me. But now, even hearing about celebrities' pregnancies stings. I despise this part of myself that can't wholeheartedly rejoice in others' happiness. Why will we have a baby? My mobile search history was filled with keywords about pregnancy. Whenever I had a moment to myself, my thoughts would inevitably turn to having a baby. My mother-in-law only added to the stress. It seems the concept of taboo is foreign to her. She barged into our apartment the other day, making sarcastic comments about our childlessness and suggesting divorce. "So, when are you planning to get pregnant?" "I'm tired of waiting," she demanded. "Well, this isn't something we can control. I'm doing my best, you know," I responded. "Don't you feel sorry for Jake because he can't become a father?" "Actually, I also want to see Jake become a father soon. If you really feel that way, why don't you divorce him? I believe there's someone more suitable for Jake. If he marries a healthy woman who can bear children, he'd become a father in no time," she retorted. Her words stung, and though I tried to stay calm, the frustration and sadness were overwhelming. Facing such harsh words with a straight face, I managed to get by all this time thanks to Jake and my father-in-law. They've always stood up for me, often appearing more exasperated with my mother-in-law's obsession with wanting grandchildren than I was. To maintain my peace, I kept a safe distance from her, avoiding unnecessary contact and only acknowledging her on Mother's Day and her birthday. One night, as usual, Jake and I were watching TV after dinner. I had been feeling a little feverish since morning, so I decided to check my temperature. It was slightly elevated at 99.5 degrees Fahrenheit. I often feel under the weather before my period, but when I checked my period tracking app, I realized my period was late this month. Hurriedly, I retrieved a pregnancy test from the bathroom cabinet. To my surprise, it showed 2 distinct lines indicating a positive result. "Jake, look at this," I said, holding up the test. "What does this mean?" he asked, eyes wide. "It means I'm pregnant," I replied, a smile spreading across my face. "We're finally going to have a baby." Overwhelmed with joy, I burst into tears on the spot, reflecting on how much time and money we had spent to reach this moment. After verifying the pregnancy test result multiple times, Jake hugged me tightly. "Thank you for giving up alcohol, smoking, and going to the sauna. Starting today, you're free to enjoy them again." "Nah, compared to the effort you've put in, my sacrifices are nothing. I'll hold off on the drinks until after you've safely given birth. I'm already looking forward to that celebratory drink," Jake replied with a smile. A few days later, we visited the gynecologist, where the pregnancy was confirmed. "There's a baby in my belly," I marveled, experiencing the strange yet warm feeling for the first time. I didn't care about the baby's gender. I just wished for it to be born healthy. I can still vividly recall the moment when I first felt my child's movement in my womb. Every day, Jake would touch my belly and talk to our baby. "Hey, it's Daddy. Can't wait to meet you." "Hey, no, it's too early for you to be born," I'd remind him playfully. Right, my bad. You need to stay in the belly a little longer," he'd respond, laughing. Now, as I enter my 8th month of pregnancy, I feel a mixture of anticipation and excitement. I started my maternity leave and settled into a leisurely routine. One day, while watching a movie with Jake at home, I felt a sudden, rapid soaking sensation accompanied by a popping sound. I instantly realized my water had broken. I called the general hospital where I was scheduled to give birth, and they instructed us to come in immediately. We rushed there by taxi, my excitement outweighing any nervousness. I was finally about to meet my child. Upon arriving at the hospital, labor pains began, marking the start of a long and arduous process. Hours passed without the baby descending, and I reached my physical and mental limits. My screams echoed through the hospital. "I can't do this anymore. It hurts. It hurts." 15 minutes later, our baby finally arrived. "You did well," Jake said, tears streaming down his face as he patted my head. "He's adorable, our baby." The newborn baby was so tiny and fragile that I felt I might break it if I touched it. It was the most precious sight I had ever seen. Just a moment ago, this little one was inside my belly. As I held my baby's tiny, soft finger, a tear rolled down my cheek. I was certain I could do anything for this child. Despite being born prematurely due to my water breaking early and having a low birth weight, our child grew healthily. Time flew by, and before we knew it, it was time to prepare for preschool. "Hey, how about going to the shopping center next Saturday? We need to start buying stuff for preschool," I suggested. "What do we need to get?" Jake asked. "You know, a backpack, water bottle, lunchbox, that sort of stuff," I replied. "Don't they serve lunch at the preschool?" he inquired. "I think it depends on the place, right? Shouldn't we get an allergy test done before starting preschool?" "Ha! But we'll be packing lunch, right?" "Yes, but they provide snacks at preschool. Both of us have food allergies, don't we? We need to check if that has been passed on." "You're right, it's a concern. Yeah, let's take our child for an allergy test soon." The following week, we took our child to the hospital for an allergy test. There was a section of the questionnaire asking if we wanted to check the blood type as well. Since the blood type check was free, we decided to go for it. The test results will be sent to us by email later. The world has indeed become very convenient. A few days later, when I returned from shopping, there was an envelope in our mailbox. The allergy test results had arrived. After washing my hands, I immediately opened the envelope to check the results. As expected, our child has a few food allergies. I felt a bit guilty about this, but it's okay. Jake and I have learned a lot about managing food allergies. There are many alternative and allergy-friendly foods available, and some children's allergic reactions lessen as they grow. I put the test results on the refrigerator door with a magnet so Jake could check them later. "All right, I think I'll start preparing dinner," I said to myself. As I put away the groceries, the doorbell rang. Checking the footage of the front porch, I found my in-laws standing there unexpectedly. Frustrated by their unannounced visit, I opened the front door. "Hello, father-in-law, mother-in-law. It's been a while." "Okay, we're sorry for dropping by unannounced. I told Lisa that we should have informed you in advance," my father-in-law said. "We don't need to inform anyone when visiting our own son's house. Now, please let us see our grandchild," my mother-in-law declared, barging in and spreading out the children's clothes and toys she was holding all over the living room. "All high-end stuff," she noted. My mother-in-law is a brand fanatic, the complete opposite of me, as I have no interest in luxury brands. I started boiling water to make tea for my in-laws. Wait a minute, Kay, what are you doing? My mother-in-law asked. Oh, I'm just about to serve tea. Please wait a moment, I replied. I don't want to drink such cheap tea. Don't you have any other beverages? My mother-in-law said, striding confidently over to the fridge. But then she froze in front of it, her gaze fixed on the paper stuck to its surface. What's this? Oh, we thought of having an allergy test done before our child starts preschool, I explained. That's not what I meant. I'm talking about this blood type, she insisted. Ha! I followed her gaze to the blood type next to her child's name. It read type A. My mother-in-law's face turned beet red as she started yelling at me. Okay, you are the worst. Calm down, please, mother-in-law, I urged, trying to diffuse the tension. How can I stay calm? This is not our son's child. All of us are type O. With a burst of anger, my mother-in-law crumpled up the test results paper and threw it on the floor. I knew something was off when you announced your pregnancy. Okay, you cheated. I want you to divorce Jake. Of course, we'll be seeking compensation. I calmly picked up the crumpled test result paper from the floor, and then I was certain of something. Actually, mother-in-law, it's the other way around. Jake is not your son. Jake has type O blood. Upon hearing this, my mother-in-law became enraged, claiming it was impossible because both she and my father-in-law have type O blood, accusing me of lying. She insisted that their son should also have type O blood as per what she heard at the time of his birth. My mother-in-law wasn't aware that a newborn's blood type is not reliable and can change as they grow. Here's the proof, I said, seizing the moment to show her a piece of paper. It was the results of a blood test that my husband Jake had taken as part of our infertility treatment. His blood type unmistakably was A. Seeing this, my mother-in-law turned pale and silently sat down on a chair. She began to sweat coldly, obviously rattled. My usually quiet father-in-law spoke up. What does this mean, Lisa? There's a reason behind this. A reason? Are you going to make excuses? Stop messing around. This was the first time I'd seen my father-in-law explode with such anger. I quickly told my child to go into the other room. Even if they couldn't understand yet, I didn't want them hearing this messy conversation. After a few minutes of tense silence, my mother-in-law, seemingly resigned, started to tell the truth through her tears. It was a revelation that dated back 30 years. Early in their marriage, my father-in-law often embarked on long business trips abroad, a necessity of his job in a trading company. Despite the circumstances, he had no choice but to accept these assignments. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law, feeling isolated after moving away from her hometown and lacking nearby friends, found solace in an affair born of loneliness. Shockingly, that other man was a junior colleague my father-in-law held in high regard. It was a revelation that shattered the illusion of our family's history. Jake, unwittingly at the center of it all, was the child born from the affair between my mother-in-law and her lover. How would Jake react to this bombshell? My worry for him consumed me. Yet to my surprise, Jake seemed oddly unfazed by the news. He never verbalized it, but his calm demeanor suggested he may have known the truth all along, perhaps from the subtle clues that hinted at his non-biological connection to his parents. Since the day the shocking truth was revealed, I haven't crossed paths with my mother-in-law at all. There was one email from her, but I deleted it without a second thought. Later, my father-in-law, understandably outraged by the decades-long deception, presented divorce papers to my mother-in-law. It was a necessary step. With her history of infidelity, my mother-in-law had no grounds to refuse, and the divorce was finalized smoothly. My mother-in-law, who had lived a life of luxury as a stay-at-home wife fully dependent on my father-in-law, now seems to be grappling with the reality of making ends meet. I wonder if she's considering finding employment. I ponder if there's a place where she can start working. Well, it's none of my business. When I think about what my mother-in-law did to my father-in-law and the hurtful words she directed at me, there's no room for sympathy. On the bright side, the relationship between my father-in-law and my husband Jake is still strong. It was all my mother-in-law's doing, and Jake is blameless. Even without a biological tie, after 30 years of raising him, he's truly my son, my father-in-law assured Jake. Despite the divorce from my mother-in-law, my father-in-law continues to show kindness not only to Jake but also to me and our child. He takes us out to eat once a month and even brings back souvenirs from his trips for us. Previously, I used to wake up in the morning dreading what unpleasantness the day would bring. But now, I wake up with anticipation, wondering what wonderful things will happen. My world is beginning to brighten. Another new day unfolds. Today, as I wake up, my husband and child prepare breakfast, pack lunches, and change clothes. There's so much to do. Surrounded by my beloved family, I am genuinely happy.